Talk a little bit about history, my perspective. I'm coming here as an artist. I'm not an art historian, but I'm actually trying to contribute to the history of net art in Portugal. So it's missing lack of recognition in the country in general, but specifically from traditional museums of art, which has, I feel, the responsibility of, bringing some diversity or some idea of diversity of art practices that are going around in contemporaneity. So I'm not bringing a new topic, nor my research approach brings any novelty to the field. And the field is very robust compared to other cultural contexts. And my interest arrives 15 years late, so it's kind of like, so I'm really late, and but let's try to see if we can close a little bit the gap that is going on in Portugal with net art. I'm going also to bring this specific example of an online gallery that existed for 5 years in Museu do Chiado, which is a National Museum of Contemporary Art. I'm also introducing a few examples of my current research because I progressed and things are happening, and I'll also show that a bit for you. So I come here because I'm not a new media artist either. I'm an artist, but not new media. And my interest in net art comes from my childhood. So my parents were engaged in the introduction of computers in the education system of Portugal. So I was privileged to grow up with computers, which was quite rare at the time. So you see me there, and you see my sister, a friend, and the Spectrum is also there. So we had a lot of, we tried a lot of hardware during my first years. So my parents were engaged in giving these workshops in this institutional program called Minerva that brought computers to schools. And they're mathematicians, and my father specifically, was very into the didactics of mathematics. So the computer was something very innovative in Portugal at the time. I'm talking about the 80s. So this is where my presentation is going to talk about the problem, the gap, and minding the gap, because it's interesting for me to do that. I also want to say that, we're a sophisticated country, right? We're not totally out of, not grounded in what's going on in the world. And there's a few private foundations that are really intermingling technology with art and science, and a lot of interesting things are going on. Champalimau Foundation, for instance, is one of the institutions that is really doing interesting and cutting-edge things. Ex-Coax, it's actually organized by a couple of friends, academics, Portuguese people that are actually in this moment in Treviso, Italy, doing the same as we are in a conference about computation and technology and art. There's also this private foundation that was born out of the Portuguese state telecommunication company that is also bringing awards and recognizing, Portuguese art. This is very recent. This is an award that's just started this year. So let's see what it brings. And there's also great artists doing, very interesting things, like Rodolfo Quintas has his own set of data. He developed his own software and hardware to make these data sentiment paintings. So this comes out of the news that he collects daily. There's also Gabriela Branch, who's a filmmaker and an artist that is doing oil paintings through the Maya 3D effect software that he's working with in his films, and then he does these paintings. And Joana Chicao, she does live coding and dance, and also working a very interesting set of ideas and technology. So, so I started to be interested in this when I, through my PhD that I did, that was thinking about, okay, so how does some contemporary art goes inside the museums and is not made for the museums? In general, art is not made for museums. I mean, museums come and fit things there. But today, there's also some art that fits better the museums than others. So this generates attention. Net art wasn't fit for the museum, of course, and it's also when it developed, it was kind of with an anti-institutional attitude as well. So in Portugal, when the internet stabilized around 1995, it got democratized, commercialized. Artists started to work in the web, and they did everything. They did websites, they did GIFs, they did magazines, and there were a lot of academics coming from this communication science field were inviting foreigner people, working on the same field to discuss and think about. So there's a lot of things going on in the country that hasn't been systematized yet. There were a few online shows like Index. It was an initiative by 3 Portuguese artists. Go to Frisco. It was a gallery initiative that was invited to be part of a show in San Francisco, and then they made a segment of the show online and invited 36 Portuguese artists to do a regional artwork for this show, for the website. And there was actually a curator in 2005 who tried to and did successfully did a show of Portuguese net art from 1997 to 2004, which gathers links of projects developed previously. So, but in terms of studying it and systemized knowledge, this is the only two studies that we can actually find. It's a master thesis made by Lino Fernandes in 1999 through a program in the University of Coimbra. And it provides a context to net art in the 90s while it's going on, which is interesting. It briefly describes himself as a net artist, but it doesn't really show any work, and it has no image. It has links that doesn't work anymore, but so it's interesting. And then there's this text of the curator that did this show in 2005, who tries to, compares a little bit the art scene or the phenomena of net art in Portugal with the broader field, and it's in conflict because it has nothing to do with the punk attitude that we see in Central Europe. It's something much more softer, so maybe it could be not recognized as net art. And there was, when I started my study, this huge discussion: is it net art? Is it net art? Was there net art? And so, I had to be very yes, it was net art. It wasn't just punk. It was just soft punk. There was something going on there. So this is the only study that exists about art in the internet in Portugal in 2009, and then there was a few exhibitions. That talk a little bit about net art. None of them is focused in the local context. In 2019, Play Mode in the Museum of Art and Architecture and Technology shows a couple of two artists' work, Portuguese artists' work, and there is this magazine of a museum studies field showing concerns about digital culture, museums, heritage, but it's always connected to digitalization of culture and not so much digital art. And it's not specific to the Portuguese local context. And there's conference again talking about digital culture, but not really studying the local context. But recently I wrote a text called Net Art, the B-side of digital art, reflecting about this absence of net art in Portuguese art collections. I'm hoping to trigger this concern in my fellow peers. Because artists are concerns, and those are my comments. But art historians are being very removed from this problematic. And so, we have these great institutions, private and public, that did follow up the phenomena when it occurred very bravely and with a lot of curiosity. And in Portugal, this museum did the same. So in 2002, it created this online gallery with its first website. Sorry. So it's a generative art piece by Leah and Miguel Carvalhais. You may know Leah. She's an Austrian artist. She's pioneer in software art. And Miguel Carvalhais is an artist and designer and working with electronic music, co-founded a website that promoted computer art and music and sound and this very broad field of contemporary art, digital art. And so this was an interesting initiative because it was like one of the few examples of the institution being synchronized with what was going on at the time. But it happened that this art historian and had a staff, Nuno Ferreira de Carvalho, Pedro Lapa and Nuno Ferreira de Carvalho, who initiated this gallery and wanted to be an extension of the museum space online. But when they left the museum, it didn't have continuation. And then when the website was updated, it also, got lost in the institution. It wasn't, because it wasn't commissioned as, a normal artwork, it just got lost in the protocol. Nobody, really integrated the artwork in the state collection. It's a state collection here. So this is the few screenshots of the artwork that it doesn't exist anymore. And trying to find some documentation, some history from the part of the museum to understand and to study, okay, so how can we improve this, or how can we make visible this, very exciting artwork in this collection that is basically dedicated to, early Portuguese art, from Romanticism to conceptual art. How can I was just faced with gloomy answers and not really much interest in collaborating with me from the part of the museum. So museums still in Portugal are very based in art history, conservators that are formed in the very, traditional art shape, so have no really, don't feel comfortable with the digital art. So besides this, this is what I found, and this is, I feel that's important to say, is that we need to change our institutions in the human resources. It's not just about money, it's about educating people to the safeguard of digital art. So I started with the study to find, or to realize there are other things going on, and to understand the specificities of net art in Portugal. And one of the things is that I think net artists are really looking at the concept of site-specific, initiated or discussed by Rosalind Cross in a very interesting way. They're adding meaning to this site-specific to the early concept of Krauss, which I find may be something specific to the Portuguese net art. I also did a chronology of net art in Portugal with art historian Luis Moreno, who's a Spanish art historian, and this is also, I feel, an important tool to trigger the study of digital art in Portugal. And we gathered like around 300 examples already of things going on, not only artworks, but with studies and articles and festivals and books and things that help understand the original context of the listed artworks that we encountered. And I'm also doing a show, an exhibition with Maria Luís Neiva, an architect, to try to rehearse the exhibition of net art in Portugal, which is not something very common. So we did a presentation in a conference in Lisbon recently, and we're going to show our work in Guimarães in this nonprofit association called Center for the Affairs of Art in Architecture. We got funded for doing this, and we're going to show 14 artworks by 13 artists from 1997, from 2001 to today. So we have 3 live performances, and we have a lot of screenshots, but also we have emulated some artworks as well. So kind of happy to be showing some interactive artworks made by Portuguese artists, and we're going to use the chronology developed to organize these artworks and the documentation associated to it. And we are going to do that in beginning September. We're opening in September. You're very welcome to Guimarães to see the show. That will be there until November. And hopefully it triggers a relevant discussion about new media in Portugal. Thank you.